Yeah, it's illegal to try to kill a candidate for president. Good night, everyone. Okay, all right. But what happened to Donald Trump and the people at his rally was disturbing and wrong. I think I speak for the vast majority of Americans in expressing that they are glad he was not assassinated. And to the people who died and were injured, they have my deepest condolences. Such acts are the antithesis of our democratic system. And I'm sorry that Donald Trump was shot with a gun. Really seems like we should be able to put some common sense regulations on those kinds of weapons. And hey, I'm just gonna say something really controversial. Whether it's a candidate for president or a school full of children, people should not shoot them with guns. Now, at this juncture, the FBI has still not pinned down the motive for why Thomas Crooks tried to assassinate Trump at his Pennsylvania rally last Saturday afternoon, killing one person and injuring 3 more, including Trump. But this act of violence raises a host of legal questions. What crimes would he have been charged with if he lived? Could his parents face liability? Could there be liability for the security failures? And is there liability for the heated rhetoric leading up to the assassination attempt? But here are the facts as we know them at the time of this filming. 20-year-old Republican Thomas Matthew Crooks climbed up onto a rooftop 150 yards from the stage where Donald Trump was holding a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. He fired an AR-style .556 caliber semi-automatic rifle towards the stage, killing 50-year-old fireman Corey Comparatore, wounding 2 others and striking Trump in the right ear. Crooks allegedly fired as many as 8 rounds before a Secret Service sniper shot Crooks dead. Reports say that Crooks purchased 50 rounds of ammunition on the day of the shooting, and investigators later found 2 improvised explosive devices in his car and another in his home. Crooks' profile seems to be similar to other shooters in his age range in that he was troubled, interested in firearms, and struggling to figure out what to do with his life. He was asked to leave the high school gun club because he was a poor shot. He wore hunting gear and camouflage to school, and some students bullied him for it. One classmate told the New York Times that, quote, "Those other kids would always say, 'Hey, look at the school shooter over there.' They would tease him about his poor hygiene, his body odor. He was an easy target." 2 months before the shooting, Crooks earned an associate's degree in engineering science from Allegheny County Community College, and although the University of Pittsburgh had accepted him, Crooks decided not to attend school. Like many other school shooters, he was described as a loner. In other ways, Crooks differs from other mass shooters. He apparently left virtually no online footprint. And although Crooks was a registered Republican, he was too young to vote in the 2020 election. His father was registered as a Libertarian and his mother a Democrat. The younger Crooks had a job as a dietary aide at a nursing home and was a member of the local gun club. And there's some evidence that he was researching the DNC and other prominent politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, and that it's possible he just wanted to kill a politician and that the Trump rally just happened to be closer to his home. But at the moment, we don't know. Now, after the shooting, the FBI immediately took over the case from local police. A spokesman said that they were investigating the shooting as a potential domestic terrorism act. And as of right now, the FBI believes that Crooks acted alone and that there are currently no public safety concerns. At present, we have not identified an ideology associated with the subject, but I want to remind everyone that we're still very early in this investigation. So if Crooks had survived, what would he have been charged with? Well, to start with, murder and attempted murder for killing 1 person and wounding 3 others. But there would have been other criminal charges as well. Generally, those are state crimes, and there's no doubt that Crooks would have been charged with attempted first-degree murder. In Pennsylvania, that is a criminal homicide that constitutes murder of the first degree when it is committed by an intentional killing. There seems little doubt that he tried to intentionally kill Donald Trump, but was unsuccessful. And during the course of his attempted murder in the first degree, he ended up killing a bystander. Now, that would have made him liable for murder in the second degree, because murder in the second degree under Pennsylvania law is their felony murder rule. In the course of committing the felony of attempted murder in the first degree, he wound up killing a second person, which would have made him liable for murder in the second degree. But given the high-profile nature of things and the fact that the target was a presidential candidate, I'm sure the feds certainly would have wanted to crack at it too. Now, the presidential assassination statute, yes, there actually is one, 18 U.S.C. 1751, makes it a federal offense for anyone to assault, kill, or kidnap, or attempt to conspire to kill or kidnap the president and vice president of the United States, among others. But since, according to most right-thinking people, Donald Trump is not the current president of the United States, he is only a former president, he'd be covered by a different statute. 18 U.S.C. 879 prohibits knowing and willful threats to kill, kidnap, or inflict bodily harm against the following categories of persons who are protected by the United States Secret Service. 1, a former president or a member of the immediate family of a former president. And 3, a major candidate for the office of president or vice president or a member of the immediate family of such candidate. Now, the Justice Department manual summarizes that, quote, "The purpose of the statute is to prohibit threats against former presidents and other Secret Service protectees not covered by the presidential threat statute. This gives the Secret Service the legal basis for investigating and prosecuting threats against all categories of persons authorized to be protected under the law." Though interestingly, the law that's referenced there, 18 U.S.C. 871, doesn't actually cover candidates for presidency, only presidents-elect. And while there is a federal murder statute, 18 U.S.C. 1111, that only applies when the act takes place in a place where the federal government has jurisdiction, which probably would not be the case in state venue. But that probably wouldn't have been too much of an impediment here because Crooks carried a transmitter that was wired to an improvised explosive device hidden in the trunk of his car. And so far authorities are stumped on how he obtained the explosive materials. His internet search history shows no evidence that he searched for information on how to build bombs. But the man who bombed the Boston Marathon was charged and convicted of using a weapon of mass destruction under 18 U.S.C. 2332. So it's likely federal prosecutors would have charged a similar crime in this case had Crooks lived. Now, if you try to assassinate a presidential candidate, you'll want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, my law firm, the Eagle Team, can help. If you've been injured in a truck accident, suffered a data breach, especially if they said your social security number was leaked, or just about anything else, we can represent you or help find you the right attorney who can. So just call the number that's on screen or click on the link in the description for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle Team. Now, speaking of security lapses, what in the world happened here? Well, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas called the shooting a security failure, and that seems like an understatement. Now, the Secret Service takes the lead in providing security to a candidate for president, but in this instance, they were assisted by at least a dozen police officers and sheriff's deputies, in addition to troopers from the Pennsylvania State Police. Now, it's not unusual for the Secret Service to coordinate with law enforcement. In fact, we expect them to do so. But the most glaring security feature here was not securing the rooftop that Crooks used to fire his shots. Now, the building belongs to AGR International, a company that sells industrial equipment, and the parking lot for the site was closed to the public on the day of the rally, but law enforcement had access to it and to the interior. And although attendees had to pass through metal detectors to get to the main venue, this building was considered to be outside of the security perimeter. Now, we don't know how Crooks got there, but the aerial footage of the event shows a ladder propped up on the side of the building, and two sources told CBS News that Crooks purchased a ladder from Home Depot before the rally. Now, the Secret Service apparently delegated the security of that building to local police. People at the rally told law enforcement that there was a man with a gun on the roof, and according to a cell phone video made by one of the attendees, police knew that Crooks was on top of the roof for at least 86 seconds before he opened fire.
Officer, people in our country that shouldn't be here, dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have
Now, the Butler Township Police may have been responsible for securing that building. Butler County Sheriff Michael T. Sloop told the Washington Post that, quote, that one local police officer did confront Crooks before the shooting. It was not immediately clear whether that officer was the one seen examining the building in the newly surfaced video footage. The officer hoisted himself up on the roof to check on reports of a suspicious man, Sloop said, but the officer, who was not able to access a gun because he was gripping the edge of the roof, had to drop down when the shooter aimed his weapon at him, the sheriff said. He lets go because he doesn't want to get killed, Sloop said. The shooter then began firing at the rally site. And according to local law enforcement, quote, a sniper from a local tactical team deployed to assist the U.S. Secret Service at the rally took a picture of the gunman and saw him looking through a rangefinder minutes before he opened fire. And according to a local news outlet, there was a sniper who was one of 3 members of a local tactical team stationed inside the building. The operations plan, which presumably was approved in conjunction with the Secret Service, stationed the snipers inside the building where they looked out the windows toward the crowd. And this CBS News map of the scene also shows trees that may have obstructed their view. But it looks bad that cops didn't spot Crooks on the roof and attendees saw him first. Now, if we assume that all of that is true, do these local cops and the departments have legal culpability? Yeah, that's not how any of this works. Under a case called DeShaney versus Winnebago County Department of Social Services and Town of Castle Rock, Colorado versus Gonzalez, law enforcement officers have a duty to the public, but not to individual citizens. This is known as the public duty doctrine. And that doctrine means that officers don't have a duty to protect citizens from harm from a third party. In other words, there is no clear duty to protect. And in this case, that probably makes extra sense because the Trump campaign has a history of using outdoor insecure venues where they don't have to pay venue fees rather than much more secure arenas where the security can be controlled. And apparently they've been warned many times about this risk. But what about the shooter's parents? Crooks' parents are licensed professional social workers. The father, Matthew Crooks, was a member of the Clarion Sportsman Club, and investigators said that in 2013, Matthew bought the rifle used in the shooting. And an email address linked to the father purchased gun parts from eBay. So did the parents have any idea that their son was dangerous? Well, we don't have many facts about their relationship with their son other than the fact that he was still living at home. A news report said that, quote, after Crooks opened fire, his father called police to say that he was worried that his son and his AR rifle were missing, but generally a person's family members are not responsible for the acts of a person who commits murder. But of course, you may remember that new legal ground was broken in Michigan when the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter when they failed to stop their son from killing. And it looks like the shooter was actually worried about what might happen to his parents because the FBI says he researched the Crumbley incident before he planned the assassination. The district attorney charged Jennifer and James Crumbley with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 1 for each person their son murdered. But that case was unusual because there were a lot of red flags that would have caused most people to immediately seek help. On the day of the shooting, the school called the parents to discuss Ethan's violent drawings, whose captions including "My life is useless," "Blood everywhere," and "The thoughts won't stop, help me." And the parents also purchased the shooter a gun 4 days before the attack, despite their knowledge that their son Ethan had been hearing voices. And eventually a Michigan appeals court ruled that the Crumbleys could be tried for involuntary manslaughter for both their acts and their failures to act. Now, the relevant Pennsylvania law is not quite the same. In Pennsylvania, involuntary manslaughter is defined as a person is guilty of involuntary manslaughter when, as a direct result of the doing of an unlawful act in a reckless or grossly negligent manner, or in doing a lawful act in a reckless or grossly negligent manner, he causes the death of another person. And the Pennsylvania statute uses the term doing, and that term seems to require the person to act rather than punishing them for a failure to act. And it's also important to note that the Crumbly prosecution was rooted in the legal duties that a parent has towards their minor children. Here, the shooter was 20 years old, he was not a minor, so the same principles of a parent controlling their minor child probably wouldn't apply. And the gun that the shooter allegedly used was purchased by the father in 2013. It doesn't seem similar to James Crumbly buying a gun for his 15-year-old who was hearing voices just days before the shooting. And of course, some people are pointing fingers at the Democrats. President Biden is under fire for the unfortunate coincidence of telling major donors that he was going to put Trump in the bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies.
Just hours before the assassination attempt. And other Democrats are in trouble for using apocalyptic rhetoric about the potential consequences of Trump being elected for a second term. And we've talked a lot about whether a person's speech can give rise to criminal charges, and the short answer is usually not. The First Amendment almost always protects this kind of speech, and even if you read this language as calling for violence or illegality, which seems incorrect, in Brandenburg versus Ohio, the Supreme Court established a two-part test for when the government may criminalize speech advocating for the use of force or crime. To criminalize such speech, the speech must be directed to inciting and producing imminent lawless action, and the speech is likely to incite or produce such action. And all of that is missing here. But it's been hard to determine the shooter's motives because he seems to have no online presence. So he probably doesn't need today's sponsor, Incogni. But for everyone else who cares about online privacy, Incogni is for you because Incogni fights back. Incogni removes your personal data from online data brokers by reaching out directly and forcing them to take your personal info down. If these data brokers fight back, Incogni will take care of that too. These data brokers might be the reason why in the US, you can search your name and find a bunch of websites that will give anyone your home address, phone number, and extensive history. They also might be the reason why you're getting so many spam calls lately, or even why someone might be stealing your identity. But Incogni is a great way to fight back, increase your online privacy, and cut down on those annoying scam calls and emails that used to flood my voicemail and inbox. Now, I've been using Incogni for years. You can see that I was on hundreds of lists, some of which had a high sensitivity score, meaning the broker had tons of data on me. Luckily, Incogni has completed hundreds of takedowns and is processing dozens of others. Incogni has saved me hundreds of hours that it would have taken to try and do this myself and added me to over 40 suppression lists. And Incogni will continue to conduct ongoing removals because even if the broker removes your data once, they could always collect it again. Incogni makes sure that your information stays off the market for good. So if online privacy is important to you, give Incogni a try. If you click on the link that's on screen or down below, you can try Incogni risk-free for 30 days and get a full refund if you're not into it. But if you are, you can use the code LegalEagle for an exclusive 60% off discount. So get an exclusive 60% off discount by just clicking on the link that's on screen right now or down in the description and use the code LegalEagle. After that, click on this link over here for more LegalEagle, or I'll see you in court.